The Secret Intelligence Service, commonly known as MI6, is the British intelligence agency which supplies the British government with foreign intelligence. It operates under the formal direction of the Joint Intelligence Committee alongside the Internal Security Service, the Government Communications Headquarters and Defence Intelligence. It is frequently referred to by the name MI6, a name used as a flag of convenience during the First World War when it was known by many names. The existence of MI6 was not officially acknowledged until 1994. In late 2010, the head of SIS delivered what he said was the first public address by a serving chief of the agency in its 101-year history. The remarks of Sir John Sawyers primarily focused on the relationship between the need for secrecy and the goal of maintaining security within Britain. His remarks acknowledged the tensions caused by secrecy in an era of leaks and pressure for ever greater disclosure. Since 1995, the SIS headquarters have been at Vauxhall Cross on the south bank of the River Thames. History and Development, Foundation. The service is derived from the Secret Service Bureau, which was founded in 1909. The Bureau was a joint initiative of the Admiralty and the War Office to control secret intelligence operations in the UK and overseas, particularly concentrating on the activities of the Imperial German government. The Bureau was split into naval and army sections which, over time, specialized in foreign espionage and internal counter-espionage activities respectively. This specialization was because the Admiralty wanted to know the maritime strength of the Imperial German Navy. This specialization was formalized before 1914. During the First World War in 1916, the two sections underwent administrative changes so that the Foreign Section became the Directorate of Military Intelligence Section 6, the name by which it is frequently known in popular culture today. Its first director was Captain Sir George Mansfield Smith Cumming, who often dropped the Smith in routine communication. He typically signed correspondence with his initial C in green ink. This usage evolved as a code name, and has been adhered to by all subsequent directors of SIS when signing documents to retain anonymity. First World War. The service's performance during the First World War was mixed, because it was unable to establish a network in Germany itself. Most of its results came from military and commercial intelligence collected through networks in neutral countries, occupied territories, and Russia. Interwar period. After the war, resources were significantly reduced, but during the 1920s, SIS established a close operational relationship with the diplomatic service. In August 1919, Cumming created the new Passport Control Department, providing diplomatic cover for agents abroad. The post of Passport Control Officer provided operatives with diplomatic immunity. Circulating sections established intelligence requirements and passed the intelligence back to its consumer departments, mainly the War Office and Admiralty. The debate over the future structure of British intelligence continued at length after the end of hostilities, but Cumming managed to engineer the return of the service to Foreign Office control. At this time, the organisation was known in Whitehall by a variety of titles including the Foreign Intelligence Service, the Secret Service, MI1, C, the Special Intelligence Service and even SIS Organisation. Around 1920, it began increasingly to be referred to as the Secret Intelligence Service, a title that it has continued to use to the present day and which was enshrined in statute in the Intelligence Services Act 1994. In the immediate post-war years under Sir George Mansfield Smith Cumming and throughout most of the 1920s, the SIS was focused on communism, in particular, Russian Bolshevism. Examples include a thwarted operation to overthrow the Bolshevik government in 1918 by SIS agents Sidney George Riley and Sir Robert Bruce Lockhart, as well as more orthodox espionage efforts within early Soviet Russia headed by Captain George Hill. Smith Cumming died suddenly at his home on June 14, 1923, shortly before he was due to retire, and was replaced as C by Admiral Sir Hugh X. Sinclair. Sinclair created the following sections: A. Central Foreign Counter-Espionage Circulating Section, Section V, to liaise with the security service to collate counter-espionage reports from overseas stations. An Economic Intelligence Section, Section 7, to deal with trade, industrial and contraband. a clandestine radio communications organization. Section 8, to communicate with operatives and agents overseas. Section N, to exploit the contents of foreign diplomatic bags. Section D, to conduct political cover actions and paramilitary operations in time of war. Section D would come to be the foundation of the Special Operations Executive during the Second World War. With the emergence of Germany as a threat following the ascendance of the Nazis, in the early 1930s attention was shifted in that direction. Sinclair died in 1939, after an illness, and was replaced as C by Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Menzies, who had been with the service since the end of World War I. Second World War. During the Second World War, the human intelligence work of the service was overshadowed by several other initiatives: the cryptanalytic effort undertaken by the Government Code and Cipher School, the bureau responsible for interception and decryption of foreign communications at Bletchley Park, the extensive double-cross system run by MI5 to feed misleading intelligence to the Germans, imagery intelligence activities conducted by the RAF Photographic Reconnaissance Unit. GC&CS was the source of ultra-intelligence, which was very useful. The most significant failure of the service during the war was known as the Venlo Incident, named for the Dutch town where much of the operation took place. Agents of the German Army Secret Service, the Abwehr, and the counter-espionage section of the Sicherheitsdienst, posed as high-ranking officers involved in a plot to depose Hitler. In a series of meetings between SIS agents and the conspirators, SS plans to abduct the SIS team were shelved due to the presence of Dutch police. On the night of November 9, 1939, a meeting took place without police presence. There, the two SIS agents were duly abducted by the SS. In 1940, journalist and Soviet agent Kim Philby applied for a vacancy in Section D of SIS, and was vetted by his friend and fellow Soviet agent Guy Burgess. When Section D was absorbed by Special Operations Executive in summer of 1940, Philby was appointed as an instructor in the arts of black propaganda at the SOE's training establishment in Bewley, Hampshire. In early 1944 Miles 6 re-established Section 9, its pre-war anti-Soviet section, and Kim Philby took a position there. He was able to alert the NKVD about all British intelligence on the Soviets, including what the American OSS had shared with the British about the Soviets. Despite these difficulties, the service nevertheless conducted substantial and successful operations in both occupied Europe and in the Middle East and Far East, where it operated under the cover name Inter-Service Liaison Department. Cold War. In August 1945, Russian intelligence officer Konstantin Volkov tried to defect to Britain, offering the names of all Soviet agents working inside British intelligence. Philby received the memo on Volkov's offer, and alerted the Soviets so they could arrest him. In 1946, SIS absorbed the rump remnant of the Special Operations Executive, dispersing the latter's personnel and equipment between its operational divisions or controllerates, and new directorates for training and development and for war planning. The 1921 arrangement was streamlined with the geographical, operational units redesignated production sections, sorted regionally under controllers, all under a director of production. The circulating sections were renamed requirements sections, and placed under a directorate of requirements. SIS operations against the USSR were extensively compromised by the fact that the post-war counter-espionage section, R5, was headed for 2 years by an agent working for the Soviet Union, Harold Adrian Russell Kim Philby. Although Philby's damage was mitigated for several years by his transfer as head of station in Turkey, he later returned and was the SIS intelligence liaison officer at the embassy in Washington, D.C. In this capacity he compromised a program of joint US-UK paramilitary operations in Enver Hoxha's Albania. Philby was eased out of office and quietly retired in 1953 after the defection of his friends and fellow members of the Cambridge spy ring Donald Dwight Maclean and Guy Burgess. SIS suffered further embarrassment when it turned out that an officer involved in both the Vienna and Berlin tunnel operations had been turned as a Soviet agent during internment by the Chinese during the Korean War. This agent, George Blake, returned from his internment to be treated as something of a hero by his contemporaries in the office. his security authorization was restored, and in 1953 he was posted to the Vienna station where the original Vienna tunnels had been running for years. After compromising these to his Soviet controllers, he was subsequently assigned to the British team involved on Operation Gold, the Berlin Tunnel, and which was, consequently, blown from the outset. In 1956 MI6 director John Alexander Sinclair had to resign after the botched affair of the death of Lionel Crabb. SIS activities included a range of covert political actions, including the overthrow of Mohammad Mossadegh in Iran in the 1953 Iranian coup d'état copyright tat. Despite earlier Soviet penetration, SIS began to recover as a result of improved vetting and security, and a series of successful penetrations. From 1958, SIS had 3 moles in the Polish UB, the most successful of which was codenamed Noddy. The CIA described the information SIS received from these polls as some of the most valuable intelligence ever collected, and awarded SIS with $20 million to expand their Polish operation. In 1961 Polish defector Michael Golniewski exposed George Blake as a Soviet agent. Blake was identified, arrested, tried for espionage and sent to prison. He escaped and was exfiltrated to the USSR in 1966. Also, in the GRU, they recruited Colonel Oleg Penkovsky. Penkovsky ran for 2 years as a considerable success, providing several thousand photograph documents, including Red Army rocketry manuals that allowed U.S. National Photographic Interpretation Center analysts to recognize the deployment pattern of Soviet SS-4M IRBMs and SS-5 IRBMs in Cuba in October 1962. SIS operations against the USSR continued to gain pace through the remainder of the Cold War, arguably peaking with the recruitment in the 1970s of Oleg Gordievsky, whom SIS ran for the better part of a decade, then successfully exfiltrated from the USSR across the Finnish border in 1985. The real scale and impact of SIS activities during the second half of the Cold War remains unknown, however, because the bulk of their most successful targeting operations against Soviet officials were the result of third-country operations recruiting Soviet sources traveling abroad in Asia and Africa. These included the defection to the SIS Tehran station in 1982 of KGB officer Vladimir Kizachkin, the son of a senior Politburo member and a member of the KGB's internal Second Chief Directorate, who provided SIS and the British government with warning of the mobilization of the KGB's Alpha Force during the 1991 August coup which briefly toppled Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev. After the Cold War, the end of the Cold War led to a reshuffle of existing priorities. The Soviet bloc ceased to swallow the lion's share of operational priorities, although the stability and intentions of a weakened but still nuclear-capable federal Russia constituted a significant concern. Instead, functional rather than geographical intelligence requirements came to the fore, such as counter-proliferation, which had been a sphere of activity since the discovery of Pakistani physics students studying nuclear weapons-related subjects in 1974. Counter-terrorism, counter-narcotics and serious crime, and a global issues section looking at matters such as the environment and other public welfare issues. In the mid-1990s these were consolidated into a new post of controller, global and functional. During the transition, then CISA Colin McCall embraced a new, albeit limited, policy of openness towards the press and public, with public affairs falling into the brief of Director, Counterintelligence and Security. McCall's policies were part and parcel with a wider open government initiative developed from 1993 by the government of John Major. As part of this, SIS operations, and those of the National Signals Intelligence Agency, GCHQ, were placed on a statutory footing through the 1994 Intelligence Services Act. Although the Act provided procedures for authorizations and warrants, this essentially enshrined mechanisms that had been in place at least since 1953 and 1985. Under this Act, since 1994, SIS and GCHQ activities have been subject to scrutiny by Parliament's Intelligence and Security Committee. During the mid-1990s the British intelligence community was subjected to a comprehensive costing review by the government. As part of broader defense cutbacks, SIS had its resources cut back 25% across the board and senior management was reduced by 40%. As a consequence of these cuts, the Requirements Division were deprived of any representation on the board of directors. At the same time, the Middle East and Africa controllerates were pared back and amalgamated. According to the findings of Lord Butler of Brockwell's Review of Weapons of Mass Destruction, the reduction of operational capabilities in the Middle East and of the Requirements Division's ability to challenge the quality of the information the Middle East Controllerate was providing weakened the Joint Intelligence Committee's estimates of Iraq's non-conventional weapons programs. These weaknesses were major contributors to the UK's erroneous assessments of Iraq's weapons of mass destruction prior to the 2003 invasion of that country. In the run-up to the invasion of Iraq in 2003, it is alleged, although not confirmed, that some SIS conducted Operation Mass Appeal, which was a campaign to plant stories about Iraq's WMDs in the media. The operation was exposed in the Sunday Times in December 2003. Claims by former weapons inspector Scott Ritter suggest that similar propaganda campaigns against Iraq date back well into the 1990s. Ritter claims that SIS recruited him in 1997 to help with the propaganda effort. The aim was to convince the public that Iraq was a far greater threat than it actually was. On May 6, 2004, it was announced that Sir Richard Dearlove was to be replaced as head of the SIS by John Scarlett, former chairman of the Joint Intelligence Committee. Scarlett was an unusually high-profile appointment to the job, and gave evidence at the Hutton inquiry. On November 15, 2006, SIS allowed an interview with current operations officers for the first time. The interview was on the Colin Murray Show on BBC Radio 1. The two officers had their voices disguised for security reasons. The officers compared their real experience with a fictional portrayal of SIS in the James Bond films. While denying that there ever existed a license to kill, and reiterating that SIS operated under British law, the officers confirmed that there is a Q-like figure who is head of the technology department, and that their director is referred to as C. The officers described the lifestyle as quite glamorous and very varied, with plenty of overseas travel and adventure, and described their role primarily as intelligence gatherers, developing relationships with potential sources. Sir John Sawyers became head of the SIS in November 2009, the first outsider to head SIS in more than 40 years. Sawyers came from the diplomatic service, previously having been the British permanent representative to the United Nations. During the global war on terror, SIS accepted information from the CIA that was obtained through torture, including the Extraordinary Rendition Program. Craig Murray, a UK ambassador to Uzbekistan, had written several memos critical of the UK's accepting this information. He was then fired from his job. On June 7, 2011, John Sawyers received Romania's President Traian Barflorescu and George Christian Muller, the head of the Serviciul Roman de Informație at SIS headquarters. In July 2011, it was reported that SIS has closed several of its stations in the past couple of years, particularly in Iraq, where it used to have several outposts in the south of the country in the region of Basra, according to the annual report of the Parliamentary Intelligence and Security Committee. The closures have allowed the service to focus its attention on Pakistan and Afghanistan, which are its principal stations. On November 16, 2011, SIS warned the National Transitional Council in Benghazi after discovering details of planned strikes, said Foreign Secretary William Hague. The agencies obtained firm intelligence, were able to warn the NTC of the threat, and the attacks were prevented, a unregistered trademark, he said. In a rare speech on the intelligence agencies, he praised the key role played by SIS and GCHQ in bringing Gaddafi a unregistered trademark's 42-year dictatorship to an end, describing them as vital assets with a fundamental and indispensable role in keeping the nation safe. They worked to identify key political figures, develop contacts with the emerging opposition and provide political and military intelligence. Most importantly, they saved lives, a unregistered trademark, he said. The speech follows criticism that SIS had been too close to the Libyan regime and was involved in the extraordinary rendition of anti-Gaddafi activists. Mr. Hague also defended controversial proposals for secrecy in civil court involving intelligence material. The Daily Star reported in November 2011 that SIS helped capture Saif al-Islam Gaddafi. The top-secret mission, dubbed Operation X to disguise its purpose, used modern electronic intelligence technologies to bug him along with his friends and family. Gaddafi had been hiding out in the desert for a month, but the breakthrough came when he made 2 phone calls, one after the other, to say he was safe. It allowed the joint British and French bugging operation to pinpoint his location. SIS agents using the £25 million top-secret equipment closed in on him before calling in the Libyan Snatch Squad to apprehend him. In February 2013, Channel 4 News reported on evidence of MI6 spying on opponents of the Gaddafi regime and handing the information to the regime in Libya. The files looked at contained a Memorandum of Understanding, dating from October 2002, detailing a 2-day meeting in Libya between Gaddafi's external intelligence agency and 2 senior heads of MI6 and one from MI5 outlining joint plans for intelligence exchange, counter-terrorism and mutual cooperation. Buildings, SIS Headquarters. Since 1995, SIS Headquarters has been at 85 Vauxhall Cross, along the Albert Embankment in Vauxhall on the banks of the River Thames by Vauxhall Bridge, London. Previous headquarters have been Century House, 100 Westminster Bridge Road, Lambeth, and 54, Broadway, off Victoria Street, London. The building was designed by Sir Terry Farrell and built by John Lying. The developer Regalian Properties approached the government in 1987 to see if they had any interest in the proposed building. At the same time, MI5 was seeking alternative accommodation and co-location of the 2 services was studied. In the end, this proposal was abandoned due to the lack of buildings of adequate size and the security considerations of providing a single target for attacks. In December 1987, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher's government approved the purchase of the new building for the SIS. The building design was reviewed to incorporate the necessary protection for Britain's foreign intelligence gathering agency. This includes overall increased security, extensive computer suites, technical areas, bomb blast protection, emergency backup systems and protection against electronic eavesdropping. While the details and cost of construction have been released, about 10 years after the original National Audit Office report was written, some of the service's special requirements remain classified. The NAO report Thames House and Vauxhall Cross has certain details omitted, describing in detail the cost and problems of certain modifications but not what these are. Rob Humphreys, London. The rough guide suggests one of these omitted modifications is a tunnel beneath the Thames to Whitehall. The NAO put the final cost at £135.05 million for site purchase and a basic building, or £152.6 million including the service's special requirements. The setting of the SIS offices was featured in the James Bond films GoldenEye, The World Is Not Enough, Die Another Day and Skyfall. SIS allowed filming of the building itself for the first time in The World Is Not Enough for the pre-credits sequence, where a bomb hidden in a briefcase full of money is detonated inside the building. A Daily Telegraph article claimed that the British government opposed the filming, but these claims were denied by a Foreign Office spokesperson. In Skyfall, the building is once again attacked by an explosion, this time by a cyber attack turning on a gas line and igniting the fumes, after which MI6 operations are moved to a secret underground facility. On the evening of September 20, 2000, the building was attacked using a Russian-built PG-22 anti-tank rocket. Striking the 8th floor, the missile caused only superficial damage. The anti-terrorist branch of the Metropolitan Police attributed responsibility to the real IRA. Most other buildings are held or nominally occupied by the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. They include, Hanslope Park, on the outskirts of Milton Keynes, housing the Her Majesty's Government Communications Centre, which supports the Foreign and Commonwealth Office and the British intelligence community. Fort Monckton, a former Napoleonic war fort, rebuilt in the 1880s, is now the Field Operations Training Centre for SIS. Chiefs, 1909–1923, Sir Mansfield Smith Cumming, KCMGACB, 1923 Euro 1939, Admiral Sir Hugh Sinclair, KCB, 1939 Euro 1952, Major General Sir Stuart Menzies, KCBA KCMG AIDSO-MC, 1953 Euro 1956, Sir John Alexander Sinclair, KCMG AICBA-OBE, 1956 Euro 1968, Sir Richard White, KCMG AKBE, 1968 Euro 1973, Sir John Rennie, a KCMG, 1973 Euro 1978, Sir Maurice Oldfield, GCMG ACBE. 1979 Euro 1982, Sir Dick Franks, KCMG, 1982 Euro 1985, Sir Colin Figures, KCMG AOBE, 1985 Euro 1989, Sir Christopher Curran, KCMG, 1989 Euro 1994, Sir Colin McCall, KCMG, 1994 Euro 1999, Sir David Spedding, KCMG ACVOAOBE, 1999 Euro 2004, Sir Richard Dear Love, KCMG AOBE, 2004 Euro 2009, Sir John Scarlett, KCMG AOBE, 2009 Euro Present, Sir John Sawers, KCMG, C. Also, List of intelligence agencies, Cambridge 5, a Cold War Soviet spy ring, Anthony Blunt, MI5 officer and Soviet agent, Guy Burgess, SIS officer and Soviet agent, John Cairncross, SIS officer and Soviet agent, Donald McLean, SIS officer and Soviet agent, Kim Philby, SIS officer and Soviet agent. James Bond, 007, a fictional character from the popular book, movie and video game franchise, who is said to work for MI6, David Cornwell, author, former SIS officer, Charles Cumming, author, Paul Dukes, SIS officer and author, Ian Fleming, author, former NID officer, Graham Greene, author, former SIS officer, Ralph Izzard, journalist, author, former NID officer, Horst Kufko, SS officer who worked for SIS after the Second World War, Alec Lemers, fictional SIS operative in John le Carré copyright spy who came in from the cold and portrayed by Richard Burton in the 1965 film, Sidney Riley, Ace of Spies, worked for SIS and others, intelligence mentor of Sir Henry Osborne Oswald, Alex Ryder, fictional agent, unwillingly working for MI6, character in British author Anthony Horowitz Euro unregistered trademark S. Alex Ryder series, Alan Blunt, fictional head of Special Operations Division, MI6, character in British author Anthony Horowitz Euro unregistered trademark S. Alex Ryder series, Mrs. Jones, fictional deputy head of Special Operations Division, MI6, immediate superior is Alan Blunt, Ian Ryder, fictional agent, uncle of Alex Ryder and brother of John Ryder, John Ryder, fictional agent, father of Alex Ryder, and brother of Ian Ryder. Christina Scarbeck, agent, George Smiley, a fictional character from the popular books of John le Carré copyright and movie franchise, who works for MI6, Richard Tomlinson, author, former SIS officer, Valentine Vivian, Vice Chief of the SIS and Head of Counter-Espionage, Section V. Gareth Williams, seconded to SIS from GCHQ, likely to have been unlawfully killed. References. Bibliography, Aldrich, Richard J., The Hidden Hand, Britain, America and Cold War Secret Intelligence, London, John Murray ISBN 1-58867-274-2, Davis, Philip H. J. MI6 and the Machinery of Spying London, Frank Cass, ISBN 0-7146-8363-9, Davis, Philip H. J. The Machinery of Spying breaks down in Studies in Intelligence Summer 2005 Declassified Edition. Dorrell, Stephen MI6, 50 Years of Special Operations London, 4th Estate, ISBN 1-85702-701-9, Humphreys, Rob London, The Rough Guide, Rough Guides, ISBN 1-85828-404-X, Jeffrey, Keith MI6, The History of the Secret Intelligence Service 1909–1949 London, Bloomsbury, ISBN 978-0-7475-9183-2, Judd, Alan. A Quest for Sir Mansfield Cumming and the Founding of the British Secret Service, London, HarperCollins, ISBN 0-00-255901-3, Seeger, Carson Knowlstrop. Friendly Fire ISBN 978-87-7799-193-6. A biography of the author's father, who was a member of the Danish resistance during the Second World War. Smith, Michael. 6, A History of Britain's Secret Intelligence Service. 1 Murder and Mayhem 1909–1939, London, Dialogue, ISBN 978-1-906447-00-7, Smiley, Colonel David. Irregular Regular. Norwich, Editions. Michael Russell. ISBN 0-85955-202-0. An Autobiography of a British Officer, Honorary Colonel of the Royal Horse Guards, David de Crespigny. Smiley LVO, OBE, MC, who served in the Special Operations Executive during World War II and was a MI6 officer after war. Translated in French by Thierry Le Breton, Au cas de la Unregistered Trademark Action Clandestine. Des Commandos or MI6, La Unregistered Trademark Esprit du Livre Editions, France, 2008. ISBN 2915960,275, Tomlinson, Richard. Nick Fielding. The Big Breach, From Top Secret to Maximum Security. Mainstream Publishing. ISBN 1-903813-01-8, Walton, Calder. Empire of Secrets. London, Harper Press. ISBN 978-0007457960. External links, official website, UK Intelligence Community Online, information about SIS. Archived from the original on August 25, 2007. From the Foreign and Commonwealth Office's website, BBC interview with MI6 spy. BBC's The One Show presenter interviews MI6 spy.